I'm Dinuka. I'm from IEEE Student Branch of University of Melbourne. I welcome you all to the first session of IEEE Career Development Program. I would like to thank all the people and all the departments who helped us to organize this series of seminars. Especially, I would like to mention Melbourne Career Centre, the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, IEEE Victorian section, and our wonderful committee in IEEE Student Branch. Today, the first session will be conducted by Amy Bohren. She's a career consultant with Melbourne Career Centre. Amy completed a Bachelor's of Arts majoring in Psychology and German Studies in 2000 and Honours in German Social Linguistics at Monash University in 2001. She's a registered professional career practitioner with the Career Development Association of Australia. Amy is also in the final stage of her PhD at Monash University, where she is writing her dissertation on the employability of students from an elite Australian university. So it's quite relevant for us. In 2011-2012, she was a recipient of Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs Fellowship, which allowed her to continue her doctoral studies at the University of Bern, Switzerland. Given these experiences, Amy particularly enjoys assisting research and international students in preparing for their careers. So given these backgrounds and her passion on career consulting, I believe she is the best candidate to start our careers program. She has been very supportive from the first day we initiated this program and helped us in numerous ways to make it success. So without a further delay, let me invite Amy Bohren to start the careers information session.
Thanks, Danuka. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to start today with this PhD comic, which I'm sure many of you subscribe to. This is the comic that's come from Jorge Cham for this week. Who's seen it? Only a couple of people. Okay. So maybe take a minute to have a read there. Can you relate? How many people were up into the late hours last night working on their research? How many people got up early this morning to start work on their research? Yeah, so between all of you, about 2/3 are in the same position. And I think we can all relate to it. But I think the thing that can happen when we're research students is that we don't often take the time to reflect on where we're up to in our lives and in our career planning. And so today I'd like to help you begin that process. If you'd like to ask questions while we're in the presentation, please feel free to do so, or otherwise you can also ask at the end. And now today Danuka's made a number of helpful suggestions about what topics to cover, and I'd just like to run through them with you quickly to have a show of hands to see which topics are of most interest to you, so I know where to put the emphasis. So the first one is how to choose a career in industry or academia. Who would be interested to know about that? Who's struggling with that? Okay, yeah, about half, okay. What about planning for the future in general? What do you need to be doing now to be prepared for your future career? Yeah, okay. Issues facing international students in regard to career planning. Yeah. Steps in finding a job, a bit more practical, yep. And networking, okay. And our services at the Melbourne Career Centre. Okay, good. All right then. So it looks like the things that I've put up front are the things that you're most interested in. So that's really good. So if we come towards the end and we're running out of time, that's okay because we can quickly cover them. All right, so I'd like to begin by asking you a question, and that is, who are you professionally? And I'd like you to take a moment to consider the future, and to do this, I ask you to please close your eyes for this activity. So you'll have your eyes closed for a few minutes so that you can reflect, and at times I won't be speaking. I'll just give you time to think through a minute or 30 seconds or so for each one. Okay, so imagine you finished your thesis or your coursework, whatever comes last for you, 6 months ago. A couple of weeks ago, you received formal notification that the examination process is complete. The minor changes you were asked to make have been accepted, and you've celebrated heartily with your friends and family. This degree has taken a lot out of you. It consumed so much of your being for such a long time, and of course, you feel very relieved. For such a long time, when people asked you what you do, you explained that you were a student and told them a bit about your research. Now, I'd like you to think about what you'd like to be able to say when people ask you that question after you've completed. Imagine it's an ideal world and you've landed your dream job. What is that job? Take some time to think. Where's the job located? Is it in Melbourne, interstate, or overseas? What sort of organisation are you working for? A company, the government, or a non-profit organisation? What will you be doing on a daily basis? Is the work challenging? Is it intellectually interesting? Who will your colleagues be? Will you work mainly in a team or on your own? What sort of wages will you earn? What will the working conditions be? How many hours will you be required to work per week? What impact will that have on your life outside of work and your family? And finally, are you happy? Would this occupation be fulfilling for you? So now, when you're ready, open your eyes and I'll give you some time to reacclimatise to the room. was that exercise for you? Did anybody find it challenging? Yeah, yeah. I expected it would be. I think often we ask ourselves whether we want to be an academic or have an industry career, but at the same time we might not be considering all of those other issues that go with it. And so I hope that that reflective exercise has given you a starting point to think about some of the other issues, to realise that this question is actually much broader. It's not just this way or that, but it's an all-encompassing question. And because research students tend to be a bit older, might have had careers before, some have families, some have other responsibilities and things that we like to do in our lives, this is actually a big question for all of you. And so next time you're asking yourself this question, do I want to be an academic or do I want to go into industry, I'm not sure, make sure that you think about all of these types of issues, and there'll also be more depending on your values. The other thing I'd like to suggest is that you start to set aside some time every day or every couple of days so that it becomes a habit to think about your career, or start to undertake activities to plan your career, because it's very easy for us to get caught up in the everyday and just leave it for later on. And we know that students who leave it for later on usually don't do very well. So I strongly encourage you to start to plan now, and it also means that you can seek assistance when you need it. I'd like to ask you what stage of your research you're up to. Who's a master's student here? And PhD? Okay, so we're quite even. So master's students, it's 2 years, right, for you guys? And PhD students is 3, 4 plus. I'm up to 10 years myself, part-time, so none of you should feel bad about whatever stage you're up to. And so, yeah, just take that time to think about where you're up to and where you'd like to be. And I wanted to ask, does anybody actually know where they want to go now? Is anybody certain? The gentleman in the middle. Do you know? Would you be willing to share what type of career path you'd be interested in at this stage?
Right. So I was second year PhD. In the first year, I thought I should be in academia. But then, when taking into all other considerations as you suggested, it's become clear that like the job pool in academia is much smaller than industry. Therefore, I should look for the higher chance. So that I decided to move toward the industry.
Yep.
So that's why I planned myself to get more experience, to work with people as well.
Great.
So that I can get some experience and then do some part-time jobs, like things to my CV to set that aside for research. I have some actual working experience here.
Yeah, wonderful. So you're well on the way to being prepared for the future. Thanks a lot for that. So we'll talk about some of those things that you've mentioned as well later on. In fact, what we know from the research, from US research, is that many research students begin their studies expecting that they're going to become an academic, something like 80%. And by the end of the research, guess how many? Completely flipped the other way. About 20% want to pursue academic careers. So if you're experiencing that, it's completely normal. I suspect that it also happens in Australia. As we realise things about the academic job pool, that it's actually not very big depending on your field, that once you see what research is like, maybe you realise, well, that's great for my project now, I'm enjoying that, but maybe it's not what I want to do forever. For some people, they love it so much that that's all they want to do forever, and that's great as well. But the thing to bear in mind is that it's okay to change your mind. So use your research experience now to guide you as to what you want to do in the future. I think that can be very important. At the same time though, realise that if you're having a tough time in your research, which many students do, difficulties with your supervisor, difficulties with your project, equipment breaking down, all sorts of different stresses, financial issues, I think we all experience those from time to time. remember that if you were in a different environment, perhaps at a different lab, or doing a different project, or working with a different supervisor, you might enjoy it more. So try to be balanced in the analysis you make of your own experience and where that should guide you for the future. There are different ways to gather information, and it's really important to gain as much information and experience as you can in your in the area that you think you'd like to work in the future. What I've learned from my own research into employability is the importance of two different types of knowledge, what we call hot and cold knowledge. So hot knowledge is what we learn from our friends and family and people we trust. We have discussions with them and they tell us, don't go and work in that occupation, that's really boring, or, you know, come and be a management consultant, it's really exciting. And, you know, that's really, really valuable because we trust these people and they know us and they can advise us depending on our own situations. There's also cold knowledge, which is what you find on employers' websites, you know, in official documentation and annual reports and so on. And I think, you know, when we're sitting at our computers, it's very easy just to think, I'll just go and look up that employer online, that's all I need to know, I don't need to find out anything further. When the time comes, I'm going to apply for that job and everything will be fine. I can tell you that it won't be fine. And you actually need to engage with people to get that hot knowledge. It's so, so important. Because of course, every employer is going to tell you it's wonderful to work at their organisation. They're not going to put the true stories on the formal documentation they provide you with. You'll get the information about the organisational culture and how that fits with your values, like in the reflective exercise, through talking to people. So I encourage you to begin now to talk to people about what it's like to work in particular organisations and occupations. So, planning for the future, I've said plan early, that's really important. But also, prepare your application documents. Who has a resume? Oh, almost all of you. Are you happy with them? Okay, we can help you with that. Maybe you're all just really modest.
Important for us. It's important for the employers who want to employ us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We say that it's okay, it's the best resume I have ever had in my life, but when you send it to the employers, they say, just straight away.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, even if you come back to see us to get help several times with your resume, you'll get more and more comments each time because everybody has a different perspective on it. And we always find some little thing that can be changed, a new suggestion. So I suppose that's the nature of it. And we change over time as well. So it's an ongoing process to keep them updated, isn't it? But by preparing a resume, if you haven't done it, then I would suggest getting onto it because it can point out where the gaps might be in what you have to offer employers in the future. You know, you might realise you don't have enough experience in a certain area. Or if you want to be an academic, you know, you realise you don't have enough publications for your field. Or, you know, you haven't been to a conference yet, something like that. So definitely, if you haven't started a resume, at least put together the basic information and then seek some assistance from us to add to it. So I'd also like to encourage you to remember that you can have several careers in a lifetime. So you don't have to decide now on what you want to do. You can change your mind in future. They say we expect to have something like 7 careers over our lifetimes, and I think I've already had my 7. I'm sure there's more to go. I don't know what's coming. I don't know when I finish my research what I want to be when I grow up. I'm in the same position as you guys. I can't quite decide either. So, you know, keep your options open. And also have a balanced life at the same time. So I like to say to master students, you've got 2 years in this project. Think of yourself as a middle distance runner. You know, you're not on a sprint, you've got a couple of years, but you also need to be prepared for what's going to happen after those 2 years. If you're a PhD student, think of yourself as a marathon runner. You guys are working hard for a long time, and you might not know, in fact, how long it's going to take you. I didn't know at the beginning how long mine was going to take me. And that can help you in your approach to your career. So, you know, if you're thinking you're a PhD student, you probably need to do a less intensive, take less intensive action on your future career now, but you need to be consistent, and it needs to happen regularly that you're thinking about this, especially if you want to be an academic. So in order to be a runner, you need to be fit and healthy and have a balanced life as well. So I think, you know, as research students, we tend to spend long hours working on our research, just like I asked you when I came in. I got up at 6 o'clock this morning to work on my thesis. I do that every morning before I come to work, and sometimes I do more in the evening. And I'm sure you guys are doing even more than that. You know, I've seen people here, you know, 12, 16 hours a day. So do take really, really good care of yourself and your health so that you can get all of this stuff done, your research, and actually finish your project and your course, but also to work on your future career and to present yourselves to employers at the end of all of it with a smile on your face and feeling well and healthy and not looking too burnt out. Some activities to enhance your career prospects. I did a bit of a brainstorm for you about what you could be doing. Our colleague here told us some ideas about what he's been doing to prepare for a career in industry, and all of those are really relevant. Also, I'd like to give you a bit of an outline for academic careers, some things that you might not have thought of. If we think about an academic career, there are 4 main pillars to the work. There's the research, teaching, administration, and service to the community, which you don't see under all academic institutions or, you know, jobs, the job descriptions, but it forms some part of the work. And probably usually in that order of importance, with the research first, depending on what type of institution you're at. Sometimes it can be a teaching-only academic, where teaching would take the most important spot, but the research is always important, I think, especially at research-intensive institutions. So some ideas for preparing for your career: start publishing early. If you want to be an academic, know what's a normal amount of publications to have by the time you complete. In some disciplines, 1 or 2 is enough, but I've also heard some students tell me that they've got many, you know. Some people might have 10, and I'm just astounded at how they manage to do that. So find out what's normal and what's realistic for you to do, and speak to your supervisor about that as well. Present at conferences. I was just talking to the committee earlier about the research students, what do you call it, Danuka? The research students' winter, the colloquium that will be coming up around July, so a good opportunity to present your research. That's for the CIS, okay. So find out what opportunities are in your area for presenting, first on campus perhaps, but then more broadly at other conferences. And if you can get to interstate or international conferences, then definitely go for it. Something that I've done when I've been to conferences in the past is find out who else is going and who's in the city where I'm presenting at the conference, and go a day or 2 early and arrange meetings with them so that you can exchange information about your research, to establish your network, to find out their technique, to, you know, perhaps they've got experience in an overseas lab that you'd like to work in, or, you know, have some contact who you share. You know, you can exchange all sorts of important information with them and maintain that relationship then into the future. If you haven't already considered additional funding sources, that can also look very good on an academic CV. So fellowships, the one that Danuka mentioned overseas, that's for students of all disciplines with the Swiss government. And there are many countries offer these opportunities through their governments for foreign students to come and do part or all of their PhD or masters by research in their country. So if you're not aware of them, start doing a Google search, because there's actually a lot of opportunities out there. There are also some databases that you can use that you would find out about through the graduate school. try Spin or Jason, but if you contact the graduate school, they would be able to let you know which ones are available here to you. Tutoring experience in your own or in a related discipline is always useful, as is volunteering to organise conferences. So has anybody done voluntary conference organising? Yeah, the lady at the back. What was your experience there?
I had experience for 2 conferences, but it was overseas in the country.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just working with other people and as team member.
Yeah.
It was exciting for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and very good experience I could get from that.
Exactly. And did you find it helped you to speak more easily to academics in your field as well?
Yeah, of course. There are many people from different universities, and yeah, it was very good, to just get some connections, some networks to other universities and
Yeah.
academic staff. Yeah.
And have you maintained those connections? Are you still in contact with them?
Not yet, because other, other countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe on Facebook or LinkedIn, yes, but I don't know if they are useful here for me.
Yeah. I think it's always useful in academia to have contacts in your field.
Yeah.
Your homework from today, go and contact one of those people. Okay. So networking as much as you can is really important on campus, at other institutions in Australia, at international institutions, because academics tend to be quite mobile. You'd be surprised how many people, have studied overseas, have worked overseas, and they're here now. But, maybe their next destination that you're not aware of yet is at some institution in the US or somewhere in Europe that you'd actually love to work for. That's the prestigious lab in your area. So networking is always useful. You might consider additional training in certain techniques, methodologies that could assist you with future research jobs, whether you want to be a research assistant or, something more involved in your own research projects. That's always helpful. And as is committee work as a postgraduate representative. So you know the committee here today and the sort of work that they do to bring you these events. But what about other committees at the university? Is there somewhere that you can volunteer your time and have a leadership role that shows your interest either in the university or in your field? And so that would form part of the service to the community. And the final tip for people who are interested in academia, join LinkedIn, but also academia.edu if you haven't already. You can post your papers there, you can network with all sorts of academics all over the world. People will contact you and ask about your research project or your interests. I've had contact from people from Africa and Europe and all over the place that I might not have imagined before joining that. Okay, so people who are interested in industry, obviously you want to gain as much experience as you can, preferably in a related area. And joining professional associations and attending their events is also a great way to meet people and also to get information about the types of jobs that you might want to do in the future. So did anybody go to the Engineers Australia graduate conference a few weeks ago? One? Would you like to share with us what it was about?
Well, it was mostly focused around the industry.
Yes.
But it's a very, very good place to start off and know how broad the industry is.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
absolutely.
And with engineering, you can fit in with a lot more fields than you would imagine.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yep, absolutely.
It's worth it.
Yeah, thank you. So I highly recommend, if you're around next year, go along to the Engineers Australia conference because it's for graduates, especially for you guys, and it was really, really high quality, wasn't it? Yeah, it was at Crown. So it's one of the best that I've seen, with lots of great ideas and industry professionals. Play an active role on student committees, just like I suggested for students interested in academia. And also an internship if it's available in your course. So if you're a master's student, you might be able to take on an internship within the School of Engineering. So do inquire about that. Volunteering is also useful. Is anybody part of Engineers Without Borders? No? Nobody? Go and check it out. They do really exciting projects. Some of our students have gone to Africa and worked on projects that have such an immediate impact on the people who live there. You know, setting up community services and so on. So find out in your discipline what's available to you through that. So, yeah, I was amazed to hear what you can do there. Also joining LinkedIn. Anyone interested in industry, LinkedIn is used all the time by all sorts of different professionals. So if you don't have a profile already, set one up. And if you don't know how to set one up, come and speak to us at the drop-in service, which I'll tell you about later on, and we can help you with that. Okay. International students. Who's an international student? And who wants to stay here? And who wants to go home or to another country when you finish? Okay, a few of each. Who doesn't know at all what they want to do? One honest person. Okay. All right. So the challenges facing those of you who are interested in staying in Australia are there. They come up again and again with the students we work with across a range of disciplines, but also are issues for employers. And they're things relating to permanent residency, English language proficiency, employers concerned that maybe you would want to go back to your home country or to another country since you're already mobile. A lack of experience in Australia, although you might be highly experienced outside of Australia, and a lack of networks. So they're the sorts of things to start thinking about and working on if you haven't already. And the strategies I'd suggest are to find out about whether you're likely to get PR based on the point system or some other approach you might take. You can get some assistance with that through the International Student Services Office, and I've put the website up there if you haven't been to see them yet. The Department of Immigration and Border Protection also has a phone line that you can call to ask any questions. You don't have to be a migration agent or anything to call them. They can just assist you directly. If we think about English language proficiency, it doesn't matter what sort of occupation you're in, whether it's very technical or whether you work on your own, you need to have quite a high level of English language proficiency to function well in a professional occupation. And so a lot of companies say an IELTS level of 8 is what they expect for very high level graduate jobs, but you know, many graduates might have a 7 or a 7.5. But if you can get 4 8s, that's wonderful, and that will make your professional life very easy. But the question is then, well, how do you become more proficient? I mean, if you speak another language, are you speaking English every day? Who speaks English every single day? Not everybody. In fact, I think less than half. And is it because you're sitting in front of a computer doing your research? Or you're living in a house with other people who speak the same language as you? Yeah, okay. So you have to be really, really proactive and make yourself speak English every day. I think you're probably all writing in English every day, is that right? Yeah, so that's okay. So the speaking English is the key, I think, and especially to convince employers in an interview that you can do it, that you're the person who they need to employ. So when I went to live in Switzerland, I spoke German, of course, at an advanced level. But when I went there, I didn't ask who could speak English in my department. I just made myself speak German, and it was really hard. And to some degree I felt isolated in the beginning, but in the long term I was really pleased because it forced me to improve. And I also went to language classes for more than 6 months of the time that I was there, just for a conversation class, so that I could make sure that even though I was sitting on my own in my own office every day doing my research, that twice a week I was speaking intensively for a couple of hours in my second language, and it made a huge difference. So some ideas for you guys to do the same. You can go to free English classes. There are a lot of places around the university that offer free English discussion groups. Many of them are run by churches, so just be aware that, you know, there might be some religious element to it, and be prepared for that beforehand, or avoid it and go somewhere else. It helps to be steadfast in your own beliefs before you go there if you don't want to be convinced. But often they're very kind people who are really wanting to help international students to improve their English. There are also a lot of low-cost English discussion groups, courses at neighbourhood or community houses around the area. So often I'm looking up on Google just neighbourhood house and your suburb, and you'll find a course for maybe $100 or $200 for a term. And you can go and meet a whole lot of new people, and you know, take any of your questions about your English to them. So it's a good support. If you're needing assistance with your academic writing, then certainly consult my colleagues at the Academic Skills Unit. They're really helpful. They've got a lot of resources on their website, and they also offer workshops, and if you need further assistance, individual tuition to help with your writing. So that's a really good service to use here. If you're wanting to convince employers that you're staying in Australia, I think the best approach is to get involved in your community. Play sport, get involved in a community group, join a club. You know, if you're really embedded within your community, it's less likely that you'll want to move back overseas or somewhere else, you know, to a third country. And it's easier to convince an employer that you're embedded here, and especially if that appears on your resume. So if your resume looks similar to someone who was born here because you're so involved in the community, you know, then that's pretty obvious to them. And with gaining experience, it can be difficult to get your first part-time job in Australia if you've never worked here before, and it's quite a tough labour market at the moment for everybody in a whole range of disciplines. But you might consider volunteering to begin with, and then use that as a stepping stone to move into a part-time job. So if you got a volunteering position that was in administration, for instance, you could use that as a stepping stone to work in administration in an industry more related to what you want to do in the future. So check out volunteeringvictoria.org, I think it is. There are a lot of opportunities there. Network, network, network. I can't say it enough. It's probably the key to your future success, because about 70% of jobs aren't advertised. So that's where your jobs will often come from in the future. And if you feel a bit awkward networking, you don't quite know what to do, just go for the free food. Go for the pizza. You know, stand in the line and talk to the person next to you about the food, about the presentation, anything. Just start talking to people. That's what I did when I started out. I didn't used to like networking either. And now I go and talk to anybody, people on the train, the supermarket. Okay, final tip for international students, have a plan B. What if it doesn't work out for you? What if at the time when you're looking for work, you can't find something in Australia? What are you going to do? Can you go back to your country? Can you go to a different country? What sort of job would you do? Where would you live? Can you go and stay with a relative until you get on your feet? Do you have a network there? Are you still in touch with the people who you've left from overseas? Because they'll be the ones who can help you re-establish yourself. Okay. So moving on to steps to finding a job, I've just put some practical information there about the job search. As I said, many jobs aren't advertised, so it's important to both use the formal job search and also to network. So if you have a look there, I've put down, you might not know that Engineers Australia actually have a job board. All sorts of interesting opportunities advertised there. If you're not a member, find out about becoming a student member. I don't think it's very expensive. Usually it's about $50. It's free for you guys. There you go. If you're not a member of Engineers Australia, your project for today is to join. Also, individual organisation websites, of course, and if you want an academic job, start having a look at the Conversation jobs board. So do you subscribe to the Conversation, the academic newspaper? Oh, you guys are missing out. So subscribe to the Conversation newsletter, which comes every morning. It's like the news, but written by academics. So it's actually backed by research. It's really, really interesting. And they have a jobs board there for jobs all across Australia, and I think also New Zealand. Have a strategy for letting your network know you'll be looking for work. Supervisors often alert you to opportunities as well in your field. So now that I'm coming towards the end of my PhD, my supervisor's sending me opportunities, and I'm saying, not yet, not yet, not yet, thank you. You know, you have to be polite, don't you? Okay, so for application preparation, the most important thing to know is that you need to tailor each application every single time. And it can be quite tedious, but in fact, it's the key to getting a job. And we can help you with that. So use the drop-in service, which I'll give you the details of in a minute. Or ask a friend or a colleague who's working in the area to give you feedback. Nothing beats experience in the area to give you feedback on your application documents. I've also put some tips there on interview preparation, which I think I'll just leave there for you guys to reflect on perhaps yourselves. But does anybody have any questions about application preparation or interviews? I think they're going to be covered later in the series as well, Danuka, aren't they? Yep. No burning questions? Okay, good. All right. So our final topic for today, aside from the services we offer, is how to make connections with people and networking. And I see this as cultivating your image. You know, this is the image you're projecting to the world, to employers. And we started today by reflecting on who are we professionally, you know? This is what we start to do during our studies to develop a professional image. And hopefully by the time you come to the end, you can say with confidence, I'm an engineer, or I'm a whatever, you know, whatever your specialty is within your academic discipline. I think it's hard when we begin. We feel a bit like a fraud. We have the imposter syndrome. But towards the end, you should start to be able to say with confidence what you are, who you are, and what you specialise in. So networking takes time. It's not the sort of thing you can say, when I've got time, towards the end, when I'm about to finish my course, I'm going to start networking. It doesn't work like that. You need to begin now, because you need to take care of your network, and you need to have a whole array of people in your network who can introduce you to other connections as well. So you can start with a LinkedIn profile, academia.edu, as I said. Who has business cards? When you go to a conference, can you give someone a business card so they remember who you are?
Question about that.
Yeah.
At this stage, like you're not working for any organization or something, how should a business card look like?
Yeah. So basically, it just needs your name, an email address probably that's going to last a long time, maybe not your student address, and it needs to be professional sounding. Your phone number, just your mobile number. And you might also put on there, you know, PhD candidate, master's student, you know, the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering, the University of Melbourne, or whatever it might be. And that's all you need. So I have both. I have my work business card, and I also have a personal one, you know, to use elsewhere. And it's so handy. And they're not expensive, less than $20. you can just go to vistaprint.com. Less than $20 delivered. Just make sure that you choose a background that's suitably professional. When you're developing your contacts, it's really important to go for quality rather than quantity. You know, sometimes you go to events and you see people, they're working the room and they're giving their business card to everybody, and you know, they've made 20 contacts in that evening, and you've stood talking to 2 people for the entire time, and you think, gee, I'm not very good at networking. Well, in fact, you are the one who's good at networking, and the person who's running around madly is not a very good networker at all. So you need to make sure that you establish a connection with a person before you give them your business card, and so that you've got something to follow up and talk about, and that you know them well enough to know that you want to actually be in contact with them. Because a lot of people you meet, maybe you don't have much in common at all. You've been polite and had a conversation that was fine for that time, but you know, maybe they're not the people you need to be in contact with for the future. And so you might establish a contact with someone just because you got along well. You might not really have a lot in common in terms of your work or research area, but you know, maybe you play the same sport or something, and that's good as well, because they'll also have connections, you know, who you might meet in the future. The best way to meet professionals is by going to professional association networking events. Or professional seminars. So that's why it's really important to join Engineers Australia or another professional organisation in your area. Danuka, what's the one in your area, the professional association? So it's IEEE, so that's for professionals as well as students? Yep, okay. So you're all members of IEEE, right? By being here today? Yeah?
It's not compulsory.
It's not compulsory. Is it free to join?
Not really, but for PhD students, I think like they publish at IEEE conferences.
Yep.
So there's like lots of benefits for them. And even for master students who expect to publish and get in touch with the technological revolution, I think it's good an opportunity. But since not many people have IEEE membership, we need like gain some buzzword.
Okay.
So anyone can.
Yep. So definitely consider joining. Find out more about that. Okay. So I mentioned before about going to conferences, speaking to as many academics as you can, having meetings with people in the city before or after who may or may not be at the conference. Talk to your supervisor, because often they will have worked in industry themselves, or they might have a consulting business on the side, and they could actually tell you a lot about their industry. Or they might have contacts in academia or in other areas. Who's actually spoken to their supervisor about their future? Uh-oh. Why not? Who's willing to say? Are you too scared to ask, or they haven't brought it up? Okay, well hopefully by the time you finish, they'll have raised the topic of conversation with you, or otherwise you could gently raise it. I know when we go for meetings with our supervisors that they're really busy and we feel bad for taking up their time, but in fact they're a wealth of information. And so maybe you could start by saying, I've been thinking about my future, you know.
I think there is an option in the progress review forms to mention that what is your future plan, and you have to talk about your future plan in that future plan of your work, maybe.
Yep.
In that review session.
Okay.
So you have to talk with your supervisor and your advisory panel, and they will ask you about your future plan after finishing your work. So take the time to talk to your supervisor. And I think, for example, for me, in my previous studying experience, if I talk to my supervisors about my future career plan, definitely they would say me that it is not the time and just focus on your work.
Yeah.
But here, I think you can speak to your supervisors about your future,
Yeah.
and they will at least people, or they can suggest you some, for example, they can think of you when you are finishing your work, maybe they can employ you as postdoc student.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They can just take a plan for your future.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So there you go. If you haven't raised it with them yet, it's about to be raised. So be ready. And if not, think about it beforehand. So before you have to fill it out on the report, think about it and discuss it with them first. Are there pizzas here? Excellent. Okay. We're almost done. So other tips, arranging coffee meetings with people you might not have met before, so maybe you've met someone briefly at a conference, or, you've had an email exchange with somebody over an interesting topic, an academic at another institution, an industry professional related to your topic, and it's been interesting for you and you think, gee, I'd really like to talk to them some more. Why not send them an email and say, I'm really enjoying our discussion, would you be willing to meet me for coffee for half an hour? You'd be amazed how many people are happy to speak to students and give you advice about what they enjoy about their jobs, what's challenging, how they got into it. Is it a tough market at the moment? What's it like to work at their company or their former company? So definitely consider doing that. Just be respectful of people's time, because people are generally pretty busy. Okay. Also, it's important to care for your network and follow up with them. So if you've met someone and had an interesting discussion, it will help them to remember you if you write to them afterwards. Send an email. Doesn't have to be immediately, but, a couple of weeks later, it was very interesting to meet you at the conference, and here's that article I was talking to you about, or here's a link to that website, I mentioned. Or I saw this and I thought of you, thought you might be interested. So, and people, well, pretty much always will respond to that because you're thinking of them. Also think about what you can offer to them. Maybe they're providing you with information about their occupation or industry, but what you can provide could be all sorts of different things. It could be travel tips to your country. It could be other information. Maybe you're an expert in some sport that they're learning. So think about what you can offer. And finally, you'll have it on the handout anyway, but you probably already know that we've got 2 websites of resources of how we can help you here at the university at the Melbourne Career Centre. We've got Careers Online, and we've also got the Melbourne Career Centre website. So just be aware that they're 2 different websites and you need to look at both. There's a lot of resources there to help with your career planning. There are also a lot of events, so workshops, and employer-related events, employer presentations on campus, but they're generally in the first part of the year, around March, with the careers fairs as well. And what we offer is also drop-in appointments in your discipline area. So for you guys, it's in the Science Student Centre every day from 10 until 12. So if you haven't come along to seek support, if you need some help with your CV, you need to ask about preparing for an interview, you don't know what to do with your life, you're making difficult decisions, come and speak to us and we can assist you. My colleague has also asked me to mention for international students that there's a new initiative that will be coming up soon. It's called the Study for Melbourne Internship Program. The details are yet to be released, but it's part of a government scheme that recognises that it's difficult for international students to gain experience in Australia. And when the details are available, I'm going to be releasing them to the Engineering and IT Careers Online blog. So keep your eyes open for that. And I think we can probably discuss further if you have any questions over the pizza, right, Danuka? Okay. I'll take a couple of questions now then if anybody has anything that I can help with directly. Any questions? Yeah.
About the permanent residency, you told me that there's some kind of services that university provides. What kind of services are there?
Yeah, so International Student Services provides a lot of information to international students about visa requirements, about, working rights and all of those sorts of things. They have people who are authorised to provide that information to you, because as career consultants we might know some of the information but we're not authorised to give you definitive advice on that. So that's why we send you to these people who are absolute experts on it. What the information they can provide is limited. You can ask for an appointment. If you've looked online and you didn't find the answer to your question, you can arrange to have a short appointment with them to discuss whatever it is. But they may also send you to the Department of Immigration and Border Protection to find out more, or to other places. But it's a really good place to start to ask those questions because it is close by. Any other questions? Thank you all for coming. Thanks for taking the time out of your research, and I wish you all the best, and I hope to see you in the drop-in sometime.
I would like to thank Amy with a small gift for attending and helping throughout this program. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tanika.
I've got a couple of more more announcements. The next week, next Thursday, the same time, we are going to have a session with IBM Research Company. Representatives from IBM Research Company will come here and tell us about the opportunities and what kind of applications do you need to submit, and also they will give some tips on how to improve your resume and what kind of opportunities and internships available with them. So we will send an email to all of you, and please make sure you register very quickly, because there's high demand for these workshops. Make sure you submit your registration quickly. And the second notification is, like Amy said, there will be a big conference, a prestigious conference in next July, IEEE Nobel Career Conference, and as the student batch, we are lucky enough to be part of that, and the conference organizers asked us to involve with the organizing the conference. So we are currently recruiting volunteers for the conference organization. So if you are interested in, please contact us via Facebook page or via email. The conference will be held in Melbourne July next year. So those are the announcements I have, and hope to see you again next week.